Okay, let's see where we can go from here. So we have these areas. Now, the next thing to do, once you get to the point where you have actually implemented or at least defined all the horizontal sections of your design. So we have the first box, which is the first, I would say the largest horizontal section. It's one big row, even though it's kind of is looks like rectangular shape. You can think of it as one large row, the red one. Then we have three smaller horizontal elements, the 3 rows in green. And then we also have these orange sections. So once we have roughly finished with the horizontal elements, we start splitting in terms of columns. So then we go inside rows and we start splitting the content in horizontal manner. In a vertical manner. So we go. I'm going to pick, let's say, a blue. So now I will go inside each of these sections and I will try to split them according to the column layout, according to how they are stacked vertically. So for example, in this first row, I can see 2 columns roughly, like this one that contains the logo and then this one that contains the navigation. So 2 columns within a row. Then I go to the next section, this thing with the game screen and the features here. So 1 column here and 1 column here. The next section is 1 row that has actually 1 column. So there are no columns or 1 column if you want. So I don't need to add anything to this one. The one at the bottom actually has, as you can see, 3 columns here and 1 big column at the top. So now it's a time to go back, go 1 step back and actually see that it's probably a little bit, it's better idea to create 2 sections, 2 rows here, so that I can split this section into 2 columns and keep this one as 1 big row with 1 column. So as you can see here, I will just have to create another div container, create another container here, and then I will split this section into columns. So 1 column and 2 column, second column and a 3rd column. So I've just defined the columns within my rows. Now it's time to recreate or to just add these elements, these HTML elements within my sketch here, so I can easily transfer them into my code. So I will go here and I will say, okay, this is, maybe it's a section, and I will give it an ID like logo. So this left column is the section that contains the logo. And then let me also put this a little bit here. So the next section is the column on the right. So this is like a navigation. So this looks like a navigation. So I'm going to use the nav semantic element. No need for a section here. So we have the navigation here. And then here inside the main and inside the first row, I have 2 sections. So one might be, I don't know, like a game screen, the column on the left, and the other one is right here, it's, let's say, game features. So I just create the elements here next to my diagram, to my visual representation of these columns, and I give them some descriptive ID. And now onto the footer, where I can also create another section with, let's say, I don't know, links for now. I should probably come up with a better name. And then there's another section here, which might be even like a div, say, and that would be like a copyright section. Maybe a little bit similar. So maybe it's not quite a section, it's just one element that will contain the copyright. But maybe in the future we can add some more things to this section, like some social media links, maybe some privacy link, imprint, and so forth. So I have defined the columns within the rows, and now it's time to go back to my code and create these sections, add some dummy content, some dummy text within these sections, and actually see how we can recreate this column layout. So I will move this to the right, the screen to the right, so I can see my code here. Let me move the styling, and I will move this here so I can see my diagram and help me like actually create the elements here. So in my header, I have a container, and within the container, I have a section with ID logo. So I'm once again using the Emmet abbreviation, section hashtag logo. And this will create the logo, and I will just create the Flappy app. And I'm going to place here something like an image. Because I have to replace this with an image. In the style, in the design, you can see there's some text, but there's also some image between the Flappy and the app. We'll see how we could recreate this. And then I have still inside the container, I have a nav. And now, most of the time when we're using a navigation, because a navigation is a list of links, a list of menu items, we use an unordered list. So I'm going to use an unordered list for this one, and I'm going to add 5 elements. So I'm going to use the Emmet abbreviation, which is li times 5, and this will create 5 elements. And I will start adding the navigation items that I see. So we have about, we have specs, we have pricing, we have contact, and we have sign up. Now, I'm not going to give them an uppercase style for now. We'll see how we can do this through CSS. It's better to keep our text in like lowercase. So I have my section with ID logo. I have my nav. So these are the 2 elements. Let me go into the main area, and inside my container, inside the first row here, the first container, I'm going to create like 2 sections. So a section with ID game screen, and then I can also use this Emmet abbreviation, section with ID game, that's features, and with a plus sign I'm creating 2 sibling elements. So press tab, and I can create let's say the first container, which have the game screen and the game features. So I'm going to say screen, some dummy text, and then here like features. Now once again I see a list here, so a list of features. So I'm going to go with an unordered list. There are no numbers here, there's no numbered or ordered list, so I'm going to go with UL, with unordered list. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So once again, li times 5. And I'm going to start with features, and then 23 different modes. I'm also going to put this inside parentheses, because you will see that I have to find some way to style this in a different color. There's a white color on the 23, and a different modes has like a black color. So once again, just keeping notes here in my HTML so that I know to go back and actually change some of the styling or structure here. So 500 options, and then I have like over 9,000 points, or probably points. And then the last one, which is 2 times, once again it has to be styled differently, the flappiness of version 1. Okay, I have an unknown word here, no problem. So I have my game screen, as you can see here. I also created like an unordered list for the features. Let me fold them. The next container doesn't have any column. I will keep it like this for now. I could create another div inside it that it will become one single column. For now, I'm just going to leave it like this. And then I'm going to go to the footer. And inside the container, I see I created first of all, I created 2 div containers. So I split this section into 2 vertical sections. So one container contains the I think I've missed something here. So we have the copyright at the bottom. We have the div with copyright. Okay, so that's the copyright. And then going back here, now I think for this one I didn't create like this this section. So in my container I have like 3 columns, so I'm going to create like 3 columns here. I've just missed this part, and I'm going to say I don't know, like links, and this is, I don't know, commercialized documentation, maybe docs, and maybe, I don't know, educational. So we can probably come up with a better naming, but I will just use these 3 sections for these 3 like columns that have like some links, but related to different like topics. So let me once again move this to the right, and I can properly now move these sections here. So I will have a section with ID links and another section next to it with an ID docs, and yet another one section with an ID education. So tab, and I have my links, and now I'm just going to recreate these 3 lists. So let me go and do this. And third one done. Okay, now before going on to look at how the website looks at this point, which is not going to look good, it's important just to double check your assumptions. So go into your diagram, double check like the structure, the nested structure, to see whether you have correctly identified the sections, the rows, the columns, and then see if this is correctly reflected in your HTML. So before going into your website and actually seeing the website in the browser, just make sure to double check that everything is reflected on your HTML structure correctly, and also that your assumptions here, that the way that you defined and you split your design into columns and rows looks exactly like you want it to look like. So let's go to our web page. Okay, we have the Flappy and we have like the navigation, then we have the screen here, and the features, and we can see that everything is stacked vertically. So by default we have these div elements, so they are stacked one on top of each other, and then we have the footer and the rest of the section. But it looks good, at least the orange containers here look exactly like the diagram. And also let's put some styling on the inner elements, these inner sections. So since I have sections everywhere and a nav for this one, I can use a CSS selector for this section, this nav, these sections, and a div with ID copyright, just to highlight them in blue. So I will use my CSS here. First I will create the selectors. I will go here and I will say debugging only, debugging purposes only, because I want to remember to remove them afterwards. So I have all the section. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections. I have a nav and I have an ID with the copyright ID. So I'm going to use a comma separated CSS selector to actually select all these elements and give them an outline or a border of 2 pixel blue, just to see the same like structure here. So let me go here and add a border, or let's say an outline, 4 pixels solid blue, and then it will highlight these sections. So you can see that the outline kind of like gets hidden behind the orange. So let me make this a border for now. So I can see now my inner elements, the columns. Now they are not actually columns, they are stacked on top of each other. We will deal with it. But you can see I have like these two columns, the logo side, the left side, and the navigation, the right side. We have the screen and the features, and we have these three columns here. Okay, so now how do we go from this here layout where these are stacked as columns, like horizontally, so how do we go from this one, which is like a vertical alignment, vertical stacking, to a horizontal alignment as columns? This is pretty easy in CSS because we can use Flexbox. If we set the container element of these two columns to be Flexbox, they will immediately be stacked next to each other horizontally. The same goes for here, the same goes for here. So if we pick this section here, this here section with the three columns, this one with the screen and the features, and this one, and set their styling to Flexbox, we will see that they will immediately be aligned horizontally instead of one on top of each other. So let's see that. Now, in order to do that, I have to first find how I'm going to target this element. So for the first one, I have the game screen and the game features. These are the two columns. These are the two blue sections that I want to be stacked next to each other horizontally. I see that I have a container element. So the element that contains these two sections, these two elements, is the container. Now I can apply a display flex property to this class, but this means that every other single container within the page will also become a Flexbox container. This is probably not what I need, so I'm going to define another extra class to use this here, so I can apply the display flex just to this element as a class, and then maybe also to other elements that need them. I know that I need this Flexbox property right here on this section, on this middle section, and yet on the footer section. So I'm going to reuse this Flexbox property 3 times, and I'm going to use like a utility class. So instead of adding an ID, I'm going to add a flex here, and I'm going to go and create a flex. I'm going to say utility classes because this can be reused. So I will say flex, and this class will apply display flex to the element that has the class. So I made a mistake. I moved this, I put this on the wrong element for now. So let me go here. So this is the logo, this is the section that contains the navigation. So I will put the flex here, and you will see that this area will change to a horizontal stacking. So just by adding this class to this container element, the two children within it are stacked next to each other horizontally. So that's pretty nice, instead of one on top of each other. I will go and apply the flex class to the other two sections so that they also become display flex, and I will go here, so flex next to each other, and then onwards to the last section here. Right here, this is the container with the links, the docs, and the education. So let me apply flex. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, with just one single CSS property, we have a horizontal stacking. Now the problem is that we don't need these elements to be stacked in this way, to be so close to each other and kind of like take just enough space so they can display their the content. We really want to get to this design. So as you can see here, let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. You can see here that these are stacked in a way where the left column is on the left far side and the right column is aligned at the far right of the column. There's a way that we can do this with Flexbox. So once we have a Flexbox container with 2 children or even more children, we can use a justify content property, and the justify content property applies a justification alignment on the axis according to the flex direction. So if the flex direction is row, the justify content will be applied and let me just draw it here. So if we have like okay, I don't want this to go. Okay, I cannot, like, I'm not sure where I can make this go away, but anyway, let me move this here. So if the display flex is row, by default the display flex is row, then the justify content will set the alignment in the horizontal in a horizontal manner. If the flex direction in a flex container is set to flex direction column, then the justify content will work vertically. So depending on whether the flex direction is set to row or column, the justify content will be applied either horizontally or vertically. In our case, we have flex direction row, which is the default setting. So the justify content will make sure that the flex children will be aligned horizontally. So let me go back to my here to my content. So in here I need these elements to be justified, to be aligned horizontally, one on the far right side, one on the left side. So once again I have to target this element, not this element, the div container within the header, and set some class so that this becomes aligned like in the way that I just described. So I'm going to create a class called justify between, just a class I came up with, and I'm going to create another utility class which will say that when an element has this class, then apply the flex container justify content property, which, as you can see, aligns flex items along the main axis of the current line of the flex container. The main axis is what I described as either horizontally or vertically, depending on the flex direction. In our case, we have justify content, and we have a few options. So I can use space between. So by default, the display flex has a flex direction property set to row. So this flex direction is by default row. When a default value is set by default, we don't have to like define it. It's automatically implicitly set. Then the justify content works horizontally, and the space between just moves the flex children to the sides, and the space between just takes up the remaining space. So we are closer to this setup, as you can see, left side, right side, and space between. Now let's go and see the next section. So the same thing will be applied here. So as you can see here, it's also quite the same. The main difference is that these are sections that have different width. So this one is a little bit larger, and this one is a little bit also smaller than the navigation. So they will have like a different, let's say, visual representation, but the stacking is still the same. The one will go to the far left side, and the second one on the far right side, and the extra space will be placed in between. So if I go here and I go to this section and I say justify between, the class will be applied to this flex container. The flex container will get this CSS property applied to it, and then we'll get these elements stacked like this. I can do the same thing with this bottom section. So let me go here and set the justify between. Okay, and as you can see, I have something that looks a little bit like this. We will have to style, of course, all these elements. Now let me get rid of some of the debugging purposes styling. So I will get rid of this border. I will also get rid of I will copy this and I will move it here. So here are the debugging classes. I will have to get rid of them after we finish the styling. I will also fold these sections, and we have something like this. Okay, let's move forward. Let me go back to my design. What can we do next?